The stagecoach lurched to a stop in front of the dusty railway station in Ukiah, California, and Florence Carter knew she had exactly 6 months to save enough money to get herself to San Francisco, where real opportunities waited. It was late spring in 1882, and the small town looked even more desolate than she had imagined from the newspaper advertisement seeking a bookkeeper for the cattle ranch outside town. Florence stepped down from the coach, her sensible gray traveling dress already covered in a fine layer of dust, her dark blonde hair pinned severely beneath her bonnet. At 22 years old, she had learned that life offered no handouts, especially not to women alone in the world. Her father had died 3 years prior, leaving debts that consumed everything, and her mother had passed just 6 months ago from pneumonia. Florence had no siblings, no family, and no ties to anywhere or anyone. That was exactly how she wanted to keep it. The main street of Ukiah stretched before her, lined with wooden buildings that seemed to sag under the weight of the California sun. A general store, a saloon, a hotel, a church at the far end. Nothing special, nothing permanent, perfect for a temporary stop. Miss Carter. A weathered man in his 50s approached, removing his hat. "I am Henry Walsh, foreman at the Lawson ranch. Mr. Lawson sent me to collect you." Florence nodded crisply. "Thank you, Mr. Walsh. I appreciate the punctuality." Henry loaded her single trunk onto the back of a sturdy wagon and helped her up to the bench seat. As they rolled out of town toward the rolling hills beyond, Florence took in the landscape with a practical eye. Dry grass the color of wheat, oak trees scattered across gentle slopes, and in the distance, the darker green of mountains. Cattle dotted the hillsides, and she could see several ranch hands working in the distance. "The Lawson Ranch is one of the biggest operations in the county," Henry explained as they drove. "Nearly 3,000 head of cattle, 20 permanent ranch hands, more during roundup season. Mr. Lawson's son, Cole, runs most of the day-to-day operations now. The old man is getting on in years, prefers to stay in town at his house there." "And the bookkeeping position?" Florence asked. "The advertisement said room and board plus $30 a month." "That is correct, miss. The previous bookkeeper passed suddenly last month. Hart gave out. Cole has been trying to manage the books himself, but he is needed out with the herd and the hands. The accounts have gotten into quite a state, I am afraid." Florence allowed herself a small smile. "Disorganized accounts are my specialty, Mr. Walsh. I will have everything in order within a fortnight." The ranch house came into view as they crested a hill, and Florence felt her breath catch despite herself. It was larger than she expected, a sprawling 2-story structure built of wood and stone, with a wide porch that wrapped around the front. Barns and outbuildings stretched behind it, and corrals held dozens of horses. Men moved about their work, and the sound of hammering rang from somewhere near the barns. As Henry pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the house, a man emerged from the barn leading a massive bay horse. Florence found herself staring despite her best intentions to remain professionally detached. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that stretched the fabric of his blue work shirt. Dark brown hair touched his collar beneath his hat, and even from a distance, she could see the strong line of his jaw, darkened with several days' worth of beard. He moved with the confident grace of someone completely at home in his body and his environment. When he looked up at the wagon, Florence felt the impact of his gaze like a physical thing. His eyes were a startling pale blue, almost gray, set in a tanned face that spoke of long days under the California sun. Cole Lawson was perhaps 26 or 27, she estimated, and he was absolutely the kind of man Florence had learned to avoid. Good-looking men like that expected the world to rearrange itself for their convenience, expected women to fall at their feet. Miss Carter. His voice was deep, surprisingly gentle. He tied the horse to the rail and approached the wagon, reaching up to help her down. His hands were large and calloused, strong as they circled her waist, and Florence felt heat rise to her cheeks despite the cool spring air. Mr. Lawson. She stepped back as soon as her feet touched the ground, putting proper distance between them. Thank you for the opportunity. I am eager to begin work on your accounts. Something flickered in his eyes, amusement perhaps, or interest. You must be tired from your journey. Let me show you to your room first, and then we can discuss the books. He carried her trunk as easily as if it weighed nothing, leading her into the house. The interior was surprisingly neat, furnished simply but well. A large main room served as both living area and dining space, with a kitchen visible through a doorway. Cole led her up the stairs to a small but clean bedroom that looked out over the corrals and hills beyond. I hope this suits, he said, setting her trunk down. It is not fancy, but it is private and quiet. It is more than adequate, thank you. Florence removed her bonnet, suddenly aware of how travel-worn she must look. If you could show me the account books, I would like to begin familiarizing myself with the system before supper. Cole studied her for a long moment, and Florence found herself unable to look away from those pale eyes. You just arrived, Miss Carter. Perhaps you should rest first. I did not come here to rest, Mr. Lawson. I came here to work. A slow smile spread across his face, transforming his already handsome features into something that made Florence's heart do an uncomfortable flip. I can see that. The office is downstairs, first door on the left. I will bring you the ledgers. Florence changed into a fresh dress, pinned her hair back even more severely than before, and made her way downstairs with determined steps. She would do her job, save her money, and leave for San Francisco in 6 months. She would not be distracted by blue eyes and strong hands and a smile that seemed to reach inside her chest and squeeze. The office was a disaster. Papers covered every surface, ledgers stacked haphazardly, receipts stuffed into drawers and boxes. Florence stood in the doorway, momentarily overwhelmed, then rolled up her sleeves and got to work. She was deep in sorting when Cole appeared with an armful of additional ledgers. I am afraid old Mr. Henderson was not as organized as we thought, he said apologetically. And I made things worse trying to maintain them myself. How many head did you say you have? Florence asked, finding a bill of sale that did not match any entry in the main ledger. Just under 3,000. Cole set the books down and pulled up a chair, turning it backward and straddling it. We sell to buyers from San Francisco mostly, drive the herd over to the railroad at different times of year depending on market prices. And your ranch hands, how many are on permanent payroll versus seasonal? 20 permanent, another 10 or 15 during roundup and drive season. Florence made notes, her mind already organizing the information into systems and categories. Do you have a contract with your buyers, or is each sale negotiated separately? Separately, usually. Why? Because if you establish regular contracts, you can better predict cash flow and plan expenditures accordingly. Also, some of these supply purchases seem excessive. How much feed do you actually use in a month? Cole leaned forward, genuinely interested. It varies by season. More in winter, obviously. They talked for over an hour, Florence asking rapid-fire questions while making notes, Cole providing answers and gradually becoming more animated as he realized she actually understood the business. She found herself noticing details she did not want to notice. The way his eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, the rough timbre of his voice, the size of his hands as he gestured while talking about the ranch. "You really know what you are doing," Cole said finally, standing and stretching. Florence tried not to notice the way his shirt pulled across his shoulders. "I thought we might have to explain everything from scratch. I have kept books for 3 different businesses in Sacramento," Florence said, keeping her tone professional. "Cattle ranching has its unique aspects, but the principles of accounting remain the same." "Well, I am grateful you answered our advertisement." He moved toward the door, then paused. "Supper is at 6. The hands eat in the bunkhouse, but you will eat in the main house." "With me," he added, and something in the way he said it made Florence's pulse quicken. "That is not necessary, Mr. Lawson. I am perfectly comfortable eating separately." "Maybe so, but I insist. It gets lonely eating alone every night." His smile was back, warm and genuine. "Besides, we can discuss the ranch accounts. I have a feeling you have many more questions." Before Florence could argue, he was gone, his boots echoing on the wooden floor. Florence turned back to her work, determinedly ignoring the flutter in her stomach. 6 months, she reminded herself. Just 6 months of work, and she would have enough saved to start fresh in San Francisco. She could ignore one handsome cowboy for 6 months. Except that evening at supper, sitting across from Cole at the simple wooden table, Florence discovered that ignoring him was far more difficult than she had anticipated. He had washed up and changed into a clean shirt, his hair still damp and combed back. He served the meal himself, beef stew with fresh bread from the general store in town, and when he poured her coffee, his hand brushed hers, sending a shock up her arm. "Tell me about yourself, Miss Carter," he said as they ate. "The advertisement said you are from Sacramento." "Originally from further north, but I have been in Sacramento for the past 2 years." Florence kept her answers short, not wanting to encourage personal conversation. "Family, none living." Something shifted in his expression, sympathy perhaps. "I am sorry, that must be difficult." Florence shrugged, uncomfortable with his kindness. "It is simply reality. Many people find themselves alone. True enough." Cole broke a piece of bread, studying her. "What brings you to Ukiah? Sacramento has more opportunities for someone with your skills." "I prefer smaller towns." That was partially true, at least. "And I want to see more of California before I settle somewhere permanently." "Where do you plan to settle?" "San Francisco, eventually." Florence allowed herself to meet his eyes. "There are opportunities there for someone willing to work hard." "Better positions than bookkeeping for a ranch." "Nothing wrong with ranching," Cole said mildly, but she saw the slight tightening around his eyes. "I did not mean offense, Mr. Lawson. I simply mean that San Francisco offers more possibilities for advancement, for independence." "And independence is important to you. It is everything." Florence set down her fork, her voice firm. "I have learned not to rely on anyone but myself. It is safer that way." Cole was quiet for a moment, studying her with those unsettling pale eyes. "That sounds like a lonely way to live." "Perhaps, but loneliness is preferable to disappointment." "Who disappointed you, Miss Carter?" The question was too personal, too direct, and Florence felt her walls snap up. "I should return to the account books. There is much work to be done." She stood, but Cole reached across the table, his hand covering hers. The touch was gentle, not restraining, but it stopped her as surely as if he had grabbed her. "I am sorry. I did not mean to pry into painful subjects." Florence looked down at his hand covering hers, at the contrast between his tanned, work-roughened skin and her own pale fingers. She should pull away. She should maintain professional distance. Instead, she found herself frozen, acutely aware of the warmth of his palm, the calluses that spoke of hard physical labor, the surprising gentleness of his touch. "My father made promises he could not keep," she said quietly, surprising herself. He built our life on borrowed money and dreams, and when he died, there was nothing left but debts. My mother worked herself to death trying to pay them off. I learned that promises and dreams are dangerous things. Not all promises are empty, Cole said, his thumb moving slightly against her hand, a small caress that sent heat through her entire body. And not all dreams are foolish. Florence pulled her hand away, though it took more effort than it should have. Perhaps not. But I am not interested in finding out. Good night, Mr. Lawson. Thank you for supper. She fled to the office, her heart pounding, and did not emerge until long after she heard Cole's footsteps on the stairs, signaling that he had retired for the night. Over the following days, Florence threw herself into organizing the ranch accounts with fierce determination. She woke at dawn, worked through breakfast, and did not stop until late evening. The books were indeed a mess, but she found a strange satisfaction in bringing order to chaos, in making columns of numbers align and accounts balance. Cole was often out working with the hands, riding the range to check on cattle, mending fences, breaking horses. But he made a point of checking in with Florence several times a day, asking about the accounts, bringing her coffee or food when she forgot to eat. He never again touched her hand, never pushed beyond professional boundaries, but Florence felt his presence like a constant hum beneath her skin. She noticed things about him despite her determination not to. The way he treated his ranch hands with respect, knowing each man by name and asking after their families. The gentleness with which he handled the horses, even the most fractious ones. The way he sang quietly to himself sometimes, when he thought no one was listening. His voice, a deep, pleasant rumble that made her chest ache. "You are good with the animals," she observed one afternoon, watching from the office window as he worked with a young horse in the corral, patient and calm as the animal gradually accepted the saddle. Cole glanced up, catching her watching. Even from a distance, she could see his smile. When he finished with the horse and came inside for water, dust covering his clothes and dampening his hair, Florence found herself staring at the way his shirt clung to his chest. "The secret is patience," he said, filling a tin cup from the pump. "Horses are like people. They need time to learn to trust." "And if they never learn to trust?" Florence asked, though she was not sure they were talking about horses anymore. Cole leaned against the doorframe, his eyes searching her face. "Then you keep being patient and keep proving you are trustworthy. Eventually most come around, and if they do not, then at least you tried. At least you did not give up on them." The air between them felt charged, heavy with unspoken things. Florence broke eye contact first, turning back to her ledgers. "I need the receipts from last October's cattle sale." "They are not with the others." "I will find them," Cole said quietly, and left without another word. That night at supper, he was unusually quiet. Florence found herself missing their conversations, the easy way he had of drawing her out despite her best efforts to remain distant. She caught herself watching him, noting the tired lines around his eyes, the way he moved his shoulder as if it pained him. "Are you hurt?" The question emerged before she could stop it, before she could remind herself that his well-being was not her concern. Cole looked up, surprised. "Old injury. Acts up sometimes when the weather changes. It is nothing." "How did it happen?" He hesitated, then seemed to decide she had shared enough of her own pain to deserve an answer. "A few years back, I was breaking a particularly stubborn horse. Got thrown, landed badly. Dislocated the shoulder, tore some muscles. Mostly healed now, but it reminds me of its presence now and then. You should see a doctor." "Already have. He said time and rest are the best medicine, and I am short on both most days." Cole smiled, but it did not quite reach his eyes. "Occupational hazard of ranching." Florence felt something twist in her chest, concern mixing with an emotion she refused to name. Perhaps you should hire more hands then, if you are working yourself to injury. Cannot afford more permanent hands right now, and seasonal workers will not be here for another few weeks. He rolled his shoulder again. I manage well enough. That is foolish, Florence said, sharper than she intended. If you injure yourself seriously, the entire ranch suffers. That is poor business sense. Cole's eyebrows rose. Are you concerned about the ranch, Miss Carter, or about me? The question hung between them, dangerous and loaded. Florence stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. I am concerned about my employment. If you are incapacitated, I do not get paid. Good night, Mr. Lawson. She hurried upstairs to her room, closing the door firmly and leaning against it, her heart racing. This was exactly what she had feared. Cole Lawson was working his way past her defenses, making her care when she had sworn not to care about anyone or anything except her own survival, and her plan to reach San Francisco. The next morning, Florence woke to raised voices outside. She dressed quickly and went downstairs to find Cole arguing with Henry Walsh in front of the house. I do not care if he is family, Cole was saying, his voice tight with anger. If he cannot do the work, I cannot keep him on. I already gave him 2 warnings. His wife just had a baby, Cole, Henry said, his weathered face creased with concern. If you let him go now, they will have nothing. And if I keep someone who is not pulling his weight, it puts extra burden on everyone else. That is not fair to the other hands. Cole ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. I will give him 2 weeks severance pay, but he needs to find other work. Henry shook his head but did not argue further. As he walked away, Cole stood alone in the yard, his shoulders tense, and Florence found herself opening the door and stepping out before she could think better of it. That was a difficult decision, she said quietly. Cole turned, surprise flickering across his face. You heard that? Yes. Florence moved closer. For what it is worth, you made the right choice. Keeping someone out of pity helps no one in the long run. Tell that to his wife and newborn baby. Cole's voice was bitter. Being right does not make it feel any better. Florence understood that more than he knew. She had made many difficult, correct decisions that felt terrible. No, it does not. But leadership requires making hard choices. Your other hands depend on you to be fair and consistent. Cole looked at her for a long moment, then his expression softened slightly. Thank you, Miss Carter. I appreciate that. They stood together in the morning sun, and Florence felt something shift between them, some small wall crumbling. She had offered him comfort, had stepped outside her careful boundaries, and the world had not ended. In fact, Cole's grateful smile made warmth bloom in her chest. I should get to work, she said, but did not immediately move. Florence, Cole said, and her heart stuttered at the sound of her given name in his deep voice. Would you consider taking a break this Sunday? There is a church social in town. Good food, music, dancing. It might be nice for you to meet some of the other folks from around here. Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to maintain distance, to remember her plan. But looking at Cole, at the hope in his pale eyes, Florence found herself nodding. That would be pleasant, thank you. His smile was radiant, transforming his entire face, and Florence turned away quickly before he could see her own answering smile. This was dangerous. This was foolish. This was everything she had sworn to avoid. But as she worked on the account books that day, she caught herself humming, anticipation building in her chest like a sunrise. Sunday arrived bright and clear. Florence spent far longer than necessary choosing what to wear, finally settling on her best dress, a deep blue cotton with white lace at the collar and cuffs. She let her hair down from its severe bun, pinning it in a softer style that framed her face. When she came downstairs, Cole was waiting by the wagon, cleaned up in dark trousers and a white shirt, his hair still damp from washing. The way he looked at her made Florence's breath catch. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and the sincerity in his voice made her blush. "Thank you. You look quite presentable yourself." The drive into Ukiah took about 45 minutes. Cole kept up an easy conversation, pointing out landmarks and telling her about the area. Florence found herself relaxing despite her nervousness, drawn in by his enthusiasm and the obvious love he had for this land. "I was born here," he said as they approached town. "My father came west during the gold rush in '52, did not find much gold but saw the opportunity in cattle. He built the ranch from nothing, just a few hundred head at first. I grew up riding these hills, helping with roundups as soon as I was old enough to sit a horse. You never wanted to leave, see other places." Cole considered this. "I traveled some when I was younger. San Francisco, Sacramento, even made it to Denver once, but I always came back. This land, this life, it is in my blood, I suppose." He glanced at her. "I know it seems small and dusty compared to city life." "It is different," Florence admitted, "but it has its own beauty. The stars at night are incredible. You cannot see stars like that in the city." "I noticed you sitting on the porch last night," Cole said, and Florence felt heat rise to her cheeks that he had observed her. "You stayed out there a long time." "I could not sleep. The ledgers from 1880 were giving me trouble." "Is that really why you could not sleep?" His voice was gentle, not pushing, just offering an opening. Florence looked out at the passing landscape, gathering her courage. "I keep thinking I should maintain more distance. That I am here temporarily, and it would be unwise to become too comfortable." "Would it be so terrible to be comfortable?" "Comfort leads to attachment. Attachment leads to pain when things inevitably change." Cole was quiet for a moment. "You know what I think, Florence. I think you have been hurt, and you are scared to let anyone close enough to hurt you again. But living that way, always holding back, always preparing to leave, that is its own kind of pain. Better a pain I control than one inflicted by others." But even as she said it, Florence heard the defensiveness in her voice, the weakness of the argument. "Is it, though?" Cole pulled the wagon to a stop at the edge of town, turning to face her fully. "Florence, I know we have only known each other a couple weeks, but I need to be honest with you. I like you. More than I should, probably, given that you are set on leaving for San Francisco, but I cannot seem to help myself." Florence's heart hammered in her chest. "Cole, I am not asking you to change your plans," he interrupted gently. "I am just asking you to give us, a chance while you are here. Let yourself be happy. Let yourself enjoy these months instead of just enduring them. And when I leave," Florence heard her voice shake, "what happens then?" "I do not know," Cole admitted. "Maybe by then things will be different. Maybe you will want to stay. Or maybe you will go to San Francisco as planned, and I will be sad for a while and then move on. But at least we would have had something real, something good, even if it was temporary." Florence wanted to argue, to list all the reasons this was a terrible idea, to remind him and herself of all the ways this could end badly. But looking into his eyes, seeing the sincerity there, the hope, she found she did not want to. She was so tired of being alone, of keeping everyone at arm's length, of living half a life in preparation for the next disaster. "I am afraid," she whispered. "I know." Cole reached over, taking her hand in his. "But maybe that is okay. Maybe being afraid and doing it anyway is the bravest thing." Florence squeezed his hand, making a decision that terrified and exhilarated her in equal measure. "Okay, we can see what happens, but I make no promises about staying, Cole. I need you to understand that." "No promises," he agreed. Just today and tomorrow and the day after that. We will figure out the rest as we go. The church social was already in full swing when they arrived. Tables of food stretched along one side of the town square, and a group of musicians played lively tunes while couples danced on a cleared area. Children ran between the adults, laughing and playing, and the smell of roasted meat and fresh bread filled the air. Cole introduced Florence to what seemed like half the county. Names and faces blurred together, but everyone was welcoming, curious about the new bookkeeper at the Lawson ranch. Several women her age invited her to join their sewing circle, and an older lady named Martha insisted Florence must come to church services next Sunday. "It is nice to see Cole with someone," Martha said, patting Florence's hand. "That boy has been alone too long, throwing all his energy into that ranch. He needs someone to remind him there is more to life than cattle and ledgers." "I am just the bookkeeper," Florence protested, but Martha gave her a knowing look. "Honey, I have known Cole since he was in short pants. I have never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Mark my words, that young man is smitten." Before Florence could respond, Cole appeared at her elbow. "Come dance with me," he said, holding out his hand. "I am not much of a dancer. Neither am I. We will figure it out together." Florence let him lead her to the dancing area, acutely aware of the interested looks they were receiving. Cole pulled her into his arms with a confidence that suggested he had been less than truthful about his dancing abilities. He led her smoothly through a waltz, his hand warm on her waist, his other hand holding hers gently. "You are a liar, Cole Lawson," Florence said, but she was smiling. "You dance perfectly well. My mother insisted I learn when I was younger. Said no son of hers would grow up without social graces." His eyes were warm as he looked down at her. "I am glad she was so insistent. Otherwise, I would not have an excuse to hold you like this." Florence felt heat rise to her face, but she did not pull away. They danced through 2 more songs, and Florence found herself relaxing into his arms, following his lead, enjoying the solid warmth of him and the way they seemed to fit together. When the music paused, Cole led her to the food tables, piling plates high with roasted chicken, potato salad, corn bread, and berry pie. They found a spot under a large oak tree, sitting on the grass despite the formality of their clothing. "Tell me about San Francisco," Cole said as they ate. "What do you plan to do there?" Florence hesitated, then decided honesty was fairest. "There are large companies there, banks and shipping firms and manufacturing businesses. They need experienced accountants, people who can manage complex financial operations. The pay would be significantly more than what I earn now, and there would be opportunities for advancement. I could rent a nice apartment, attend concerts and theater, have a real life." "That all sounds fine," Cole said carefully. "But what about the rest of it? Friends, family, someone to share that nice apartment with." "I would make friends eventually. As for family," Florence shrugged, "I have managed without for this long." "You are not going to ask what I want?" Cole asked, his voice light but his eyes serious. Florence set down her plate, her appetite suddenly gone. "I am not sure I should." "I want what my parents had," Cole said simply. "They loved each other fiercely, worked side by side to build the ranch, raised me in a home full of warmth and laughter. When my mother died 5 years ago, it nearly destroyed my father. He moved to town because he could not bear to stay in the house without her. But you know what he told me. He said even knowing how much it would hurt to lose her, he would do it all again in a heartbeat. That the years they had together were worth any amount of pain." "That is beautiful," Florence said softly, "but it also proves my point. Love leads to loss." "Everything leads to loss eventually, Florence. We all die. The question is whether we really live first." Cole reached over, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear in a gesture so tender it made her eyes sting. I think you have been so busy protecting yourself from pain that you have forgotten how to let yourself be happy. Maybe I have forgotten, or maybe I never learned in the first place. Florence met his eyes. My parents loved each other too, at least I think they did, but my father's poor decisions affected all of us. His dreams became our nightmares. Love was not enough to save any of us. I am not your father, Florence. And you are not your mother, doomed to repeat their mistakes. Cole's voice was firm now, almost urgent. You have to stop letting their story be your story. Before Florence could respond, a commotion near the church drew their attention. A man was shouting, clearly drunk, while two others tried to calm him down. Florence recognized him as the ranch hand Cole had fired earlier that week. Cole stood immediately, his body tensing. "Stay here." Cole, wait, but he was already striding across the square toward the disturbance. Florence stood too, watching anxiously as Cole approached the drunk man. She could not hear what was said, but suddenly the man swung at Cole, his fist connecting with Cole's jaw with a crack that made Florence gasp. Cole staggered back but did not fall. The other men grabbed the drunk man, restraining him, while Cole held up a hand, saying something that looked like he was trying to defuse the situation. The town sheriff arrived, a grizzled man in his 50s, and took control, leading the drunk man away while Cole stood rubbing his jaw. Florence hurried over. "Are you hurt?" "I am fine," Cole said, but she could see the bruise already forming. "Let us go home." The ride back to the ranch was quiet. Cole seemed lost in thought, his jaw tight, and Florence did not push for conversation. When they arrived, she insisted on getting ice from the ice house and wrapping it in a cloth for his face. "You did not have to get involved," she said, holding the cold compress against his bruising jaw while they sat in the main room of the house. "The sheriff would have handled it. He was one of my men until a few days ago. My responsibility." Cole winced as she pressed the ice against a particularly tender spot. "Sorry for ruining the afternoon. You did not ruin anything." Florence found herself standing very close to him, acutely aware of his nearness, the way he was looking up at her from his seated position. "You were trying to help." "Florence," Cole said softly, reaching up to cover her hand with his, the one holding the ice to his face. "Thank you for coming today, for giving this a chance. I had a lovely time, right up until you got punched." He laughed, then winced again. "Mostly a lovely time then." They stayed like that for a moment, frozen in the intimacy of the gesture, Florence's hand against his face, his hand covering hers, their eyes locked. Then Cole slowly pulled her hand away, but he did not let go. Instead, he stood, still holding her hand, stepping closer until barely any space remained between them. "I want to kiss you," he said, his voice rough. "But only if you want it to." Florence's heart felt like it might beat out of her chest. Every rational part of her brain screamed warnings, but they were drowned out by the overwhelming desire to feel his lips on hers, to know what it would be like to be kissed by Cole Lawson. "I want it," she whispered. Cole cupped her face with his free hand, his thumb tracing her cheekbone, then leaned down slowly, giving her every opportunity to change her mind. When his lips finally met hers, Florence felt the world shift beneath her feet. The kiss was gentle at first, questioning, but when Florence responded, her hands coming up to grip his shoulders, it deepened. Cole pulled her closer, his arms wrapping around her waist, and Florence felt like she was falling and flying at the same time. She had been kissed before, clumsy attempts by boys who did not matter, but this was different. This was fire and safety and coming home all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. "I am in trouble," he said with a shaky laugh. I am falling for you, Florence Carter, and I know you are planning to leave, and I am doing it anyway. Florence felt tears prick her eyes. I am scared, Cole. I know, but I am right here and I am not going anywhere. For as long as you are here, I am yours if you want me. I want you, Florence admitted, the words both terrifying and liberating. I have wanted you since the moment I saw you with that horse, and it scares me to death. Then we will be scared together. Cole kissed her again, softer this time, a promise rather than a question. Stay with me tonight. Not like that, he added quickly when her eyes widened. Just stay. Talk with me, let me hold you. Let us not waste any of the time we have. Florence knew she should return to her room, maintain some propriety, protect what remained of her heart. But she was so tired of being alone, of being scared, of holding everyone at arm's length. So instead, she nodded. They sat together on the sofa, and Florence found herself telling Cole things she had never told anyone. About her father's grandiose plans that always fell through. About her mother's quiet desperation as she tried to hold their family together with strength of will and endless work. About the debts collectors who came after her father's death, taking everything including Florence's mother's wedding ring. About holding her mother as she died, making a promise that she would never end up that way, dependent and destroyed by someone else's failures. Cole listened without judgment, his arm around her shoulders, occasionally pressing kisses to her hair. When she finished, wrung out and exhausted, he simply held her tighter. Your father made poor choices, he said finally. But love was not the problem, Florence. Irresponsibility was. A man who truly loves his family does not gamble away their security. That was not love, or at least not love alone. That was selfishness. How do you tell the difference? Florence asked. How do you know someone will not let you down? You do not for certain, but you pay attention. You watch how they treat others, especially those who cannot offer them anything in return. You see if their actions match their words. You trust your instincts. Cole tilted her face up to look at him. What do your instincts tell you about me? Florence searched his face, those steady, pale eyes, the strong, honest lines of his features. That you are good, that you care deeply about your people and your land, that you work hard and keep your word. She hesitated. That you could hurt me worse than anyone ever has, simply because I care what happens to you. I could say the same about you, Cole said softly. You are planning to leave, Florence. You have made no secret of it. I am the one taking the bigger risk here, falling for someone who has one foot out the door already. That is different. How? Because you chose this. You knew from the start that I was temporary. And you chose to kiss me back. You chose to stay here tonight. We are both choosing this, Florence, with full knowledge that it might end badly. Cole brushed his thumb across her lower lip. But I think it is going to be worth it. I think you are worth it. Florence felt something crack open in her chest, some frozen place beginning to thaw. I do not know how to do this, how to let someone in. Then we will learn together. No expectations, no pressure, just us right now, taking it one day at a time. Cole pulled her back against his chest, wrapping both arms around her. Stay with me, not just tonight, but really stay. Give us a real chance. If you still want to go to San Francisco in 6 months, I will drive you to the station myself. But do not run away before you even know what you are running from. Florence let herself relax into his embrace, feeling the steady beat of his heart against her back, the warmth of his arms around her. Okay, she whispered. I will stay, I will try. That is all I ask. They sat together as the sun set beyond the windows, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Florence felt something she had not allowed herself to feel in years. Hope. Maybe Cole was right. Maybe she had been so focused on protecting herself from pain that she had forgotten how to really live. Maybe it was time to take a risk, to let herself be happy, even if it was only for a little while, even if it meant getting her heart broken when she eventually left for San Francisco. Except somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, she would not want to leave at all. The following weeks fell into a pattern that felt dangerously like domestic bliss. Florence worked on the ranch accounts during the day, bringing order to years of disorganization. She discovered several areas where the ranch was losing money unnecessarily, and presented Cole with detailed proposals for improvement. He listened to her suggestions with genuine interest, implementing her ideas and praising her insight. "You have saved us nearly $300 just by renegotiating the feed contract," he told her one evening as they reviewed the books together. "At this rate, you are going to make yourself indispensable." "That is the goal," Florence said, but her smile was softer than it would have been a month ago. The idea of being indispensable to the ranch, to Cole, no longer terrified her quite so much. Evenings were spent together, sometimes on the porch watching the sunset, sometimes in the main room reading while Cole whittled or mended tack. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's stories and dreams. Cole told her about growing up on the ranch, about his mother who had been strong and loving, about his father who had taught him to read the land and the animals. Florence found herself sharing memories she had kept locked away, good ones this time. Her mother teaching her to bake bread, the smell of it filling their small kitchen. Her father reading to her before bed, doing different voices for different characters, making her laugh. There had been good times, she realized, before the debts and desperation. Her parents had loved her in their imperfect way. Cole kissed her often now, sweet stolen moments that made Florence's heart race. In the barn when she brought him lunch. In the office when he came to ask about the accounts. On the porch under the stars. Each kiss felt like a promise, like something precious being built between them. One Saturday evening, nearly 2 months after Florence arrived, Cole surprised her by asking if she would like to learn to ride. "You cannot truly understand the ranch from inside the house," he said. "Let me show you what I see every day." Florence had never been on a horse before, and she was terrified, but she trusted Cole not to let her get hurt. He chose a gentle mare named Daisy, patiently teaching Florence how to mount, how to sit, how to hold the reins. His hands were steady on her waist as he helped her into the saddle, and his voice was calm and encouraging as he led Daisy around the corral. After an hour, Florence was comfortable enough that Cole mounted his own horse, and they rode out from the ranch buildings toward the hills. The sun was beginning to set, painting everything golden, and the air was warm with the promise of summer. Cole led her to a high point overlooking the ranch. Below, she could see the house and barns, the corrals and outbuildings, the herds dotting the hills. Beyond that, the town of Ukiah in the distance, and further still, the mountains rising purple against the sky. "This is what I see when I think about my life," Cole said, his horse standing next to hers so they could sit side by side. "All of this, built by my father's hands and maintained by mine. Every fence post, every barn board, every head of cattle represents work and care. This is not just a business to me, Florence. It is legacy. It is home." Florence looked out at the view, seeing it through his eyes, understanding for the first time the deep connection he had to this land. "It is beautiful," she said honestly. "I can see why you love it." "I want to share it with someone," Cole said, turning to look at her. "I want to share it with you." Florence felt her throat tighten. "Cole, I know what we said, no pressure, no expectations. But I cannot keep pretending that this is casual for me, Florence. I love you. I am in love with you and I want you to stay. Not for 6 months, not for a year, but forever. I want to marry you, build a life with you, grow old with you on this land." Florence felt tears spill down her cheeks. You said you would not ask me to change my plans. I lied. Cole's voice was raw, honest. Or maybe I believed it when I said it, but I was fooling myself. Florence, you have changed everything for me. This house feels like a home again when you are in it. Food tastes better when I share it with you. Work feels lighter knowing I get to see you at the end of the day. I cannot imagine going back to how things were before you arrived. I am scared, Florence whispered. What if I am like my father? What if I make promises I cannot keep, build dreams that collapse? You are nothing like your father. Cole reached across the space between their horses, taking her hand. You are the most responsible, hardworking, honest person I know. You balance the books to the penny, you think 3 steps ahead, you plan for every contingency. If anything, you are too cautious, not too reckless. But what about San Francisco? What about the life I planned? What about it? Cole squeezed her hand. Florence, be honest with yourself. Do you really want to live in a city apartment alone, working for some faceless company with no one to come home to? Or have you been holding on to that dream because it felt safe, because it did not require you to trust anyone but yourself? Florence closed her eyes, letting his words sink in. He was right, she realized with startling clarity. Somewhere over the past 2 months, the dream of San Francisco had faded, replaced by a different dream. Mornings waking up next to Cole, working together on the ranch, sitting on the porch in the evenings watching the sunset. Building something real and lasting with someone she loved, because she did love him. She had been fighting it, denying it, but it was undeniably true. She loved Cole Lawson with a fierceness that terrified and exhilarated her. I love you too, she said, opening her eyes to meet his gaze. I tried not to, but I do. Cole's face transformed, joy blazing across his features. Before Florence could say anything else, he dismounted his horse in one fluid motion and came to her side, reaching up to lift her down from Daisy. The moment her feet touched the ground, his arms were around her, his lips on hers, kissing her with an intensity that made her head spin. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole cupped her face in his hands. Say you will stay. Say you will marry me. I promise you, Florence, I will spend every day for the rest of my life making sure you never regret it. Florence felt the last of her resistance crumble. She was tired of being afraid, tired of running from the very thing she wanted most. Yes, she said, and watched his eyes light up. Yes, I will marry you, Cole Lawson. He kissed her again, then swept her up and spun her around, both of them laughing with pure joy. When he set her down, Florence felt lighter than she had in years, like some enormous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. We should get back before it is too dark, Cole said reluctantly, but he could not seem to stop touching her. His hands on her waist, her face, her hair, as if he needed to convince himself she was real. The ride back to the ranch was slower, their horses walking side by side, Cole and Florence holding hands between them. They talked about the future now, tentatively at first, then with growing excitement. A small wedding, just friends from the area and Cole's father. Florence would continue managing the ranch books, maybe even expand her role. They would fix up the house, make it truly theirs. Someday children, though neither of them was in a hurry. I never thought I would want this, Florence admitted as they rode into the ranch yard. A home, a husband, roots. I thought freedom meant being untethered. Maybe real freedom is choosing where you want to be and choosing someone to be there with you, Cole said. Not running because you are afraid, but staying because you are brave enough to build something. That night they sat on the porch long after dark, Florence tucked against Cole's side, his arm around her shoulders. The stars stretched overhead in brilliant profusion, and Florence felt a peace she had never known. This was right. This was home. When should we get married? Cole asked, pressing a kiss to her hair. Soon, Florence said. I do not want to wait long. Next month, that gives us time to make arrangements, but not so long that I have to wait forever to make you my wife. Next month sounds perfect. They planned the wedding over the following weeks with help from the townspeople, who were delighted by the news. Martha from the church social insisted on making the wedding cake. The women from the sewing circle offered to help Florence make a dress. Cole's father, a gruff man in his 70s, came out to the ranch to meet Florence properly and gave his blessing with tears in his eyes. You have made my son happy again, he told Florence, clasping her hands. I had worried he would stay alone forever, married to this ranch. Thank you for giving him a reason to build a life, not just run a business. Florence found herself embraced by the community in a way she had never experienced. Women she barely knew offered advice and assistance. Men tipped their hats to her on the street, calling her Mrs. Lawson, even though the wedding had not happened yet. Children waved when she rode into town with Cole to pick up supplies. This was what she had been missing her whole life, she realized. Connection. Community. A place where people knew your name and cared what happened to you. She had thought she wanted the anonymity of a big city, but that was just another form of isolation. This, belonging to a place and having it belong to you, this was infinitely better. The wedding day arrived in midsummer, hot and clear. Florence dressed in the simple but beautiful gown the women had helped her make, white cotton with lace at the collar and cuffs, her hair arranged in soft curls. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. Gone was the severe, closed-off person who had arrived in Ukiah 3 months ago. In her place stood someone softer, happier, someone who looked like she belonged. The ceremony took place at the small church in town, packed with well-wishers. Florence walked down the aisle alone, having no one to give her away, but it felt right. She was choosing this herself, giving herself to Cole and to this life of her own free will. Cole stood at the front in a new suit, his eyes never leaving her face as she approached. When she reached him, he took her hands, and Florence felt the rightness of it settle over her like a blessing. The ceremony was simple and brief. They exchanged vows and rings, Cole's voice steady and sure, Florence's quieter but no less certain. When the minister pronounced them married and told Cole he could kiss his bride, Cole pulled Florence into his arms and kissed her thoroughly, earning cheers and laughter from the congregation. The celebration afterward was held at the ranch, tables of food set up in the yard, music and dancing that lasted into the evening. Florence danced with Cole, with Henry Walsh, with Cole's father, with half the men in the county. She laughed more than she had in years, her face aching from smiling. As the sun began to set, Cole pulled her aside, leading her away from the party toward the house. Come with me, Mrs. Lawson. I have something to show you. He led her upstairs to the bedroom they would now share, and Florence felt her heart start to race for a different reason. Cole seemed to sense her nervousness because he simply held her, his arms around her waist, his forehead resting against hers. We do not have to do anything you are not ready for, he said softly. I just wanted a moment alone with you, away from everyone else. Florence pulled back to look at him, this man who was now her husband, who had been patient and kind and had somehow convinced her to trust again. I am ready, she said, surprising herself with the truth of it. I love you, Cole, and I trust you. I love you too, Florence, more than I can say. He kissed her then, deep and slow, and Florence let herself sink into it, all her fears and reservations falling away. This was right. This was home. This was the life she had been afraid to want. That night, as they came together for the first time, Florence felt the last of her walls crumble. Cole was gentle and patient, his hands reverent on her skin, his voice a low rumble of endearments and encouragement. Afterward, lying in his arms with the sounds of the party still faintly audible outside, Florence felt a completeness she had never imagined possible. "Thank you," she whispered into the darkness. "For what?" Cole's hand stroked her hair, his other arm tight around her waist. "For not giving up on me, for being patient, for showing me that not all promises are empty. Thank you for taking a chance on me on this life. I know it was not what you planned." "It is better than what I planned," Florence said, and meant it with her whole heart. The first year of their marriage was not without challenges. The ranch demanded constant work, and there were times when Florence went days barely seeing Cole except late at night when he fell into bed exhausted. She learned to help where she could, bringing lunch to him and the hands working in distant fields, riding out to keep him company when he checked the herds. Her bookkeeping revealed that the ranch, while profitable, could be more efficient. She presented Cole with plans to diversify, suggesting they invest in better breeding stock, perhaps sell some horses in addition to cattle. Cole listened to her ideas with respect, implementing the ones that made sense, explaining why others would not work given their resources and land. They became true partners, in business and in life. Florence discovered she had a talent for managing the household accounts and the ranch books, freeing Cole to focus on the physical work he loved. Together, they made a formidable team, the ranch becoming more profitable under their combined management. The second year brought the discovery that Florence was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but wanted to be certain before telling Cole. When she finally shared the news one evening after supper, his reaction was everything she could have hoped for. He picked her up and spun her around, laughing and kissing her, his hands immediately moving to her still flat stomach with wonder. "A baby," he kept saying, his voice full of awe. "We are going to have a baby. Are you happy?" Florence asked, though she could see the answer on his face. Happy does not begin to cover it. Cole knelt in front of her, pressing a kiss to her stomach. "Hello in there, little one. I am your father, and I already love you more than I can say." Florence felt tears stream down her face, overwhelmed by the love she felt for this man, for the child growing inside her, for the life they were building together. "I was so scared of this," she admitted, "of being like my mother, trapped and desperate, but I am not scared anymore." "You are nothing like your mother's situation," Cole said fiercely, standing and pulling her close. "You are my partner, Florence, my equal. We make decisions together, we work together, we build this life together. You are not trapped. You are home." "I am home," Florence agreed, and finally, truly believed it. Their son was born the following spring, a healthy boy with Cole's dark hair and Florence's gray eyes. They named him William after Cole's father, who wept when he held his grandson for the first time. Florence fell in love instantly and completely, this tiny person who depended on her utterly. The fierce, protective love she felt surprised her with its intensity. Cole was a devoted father from the start, taking William with him around the ranch as soon as he was old enough to sit up, telling him stories about the land and the animals. Florence would watch them together, her heart so full it felt like it might burst. "He is going to grow up knowing he is loved," Cole said one evening, rocking William to sleep while Florence looked on. "He is going to grow up seeing his parents work together, support each other, love each other. He is going to know what a real partnership looks like." "We are going to make mistakes," Florence said, voicing the fear that sometimes kept her awake at night. "We are not going to be perfect parents. No one is perfect, but we will love him and we will do our best and we will be there for him. That is more than a lot of children get." Cole looked up at her, William asleep in his arms. "Florence, you are a wonderful mother. Stop doubting yourself." As William grew, Florence marveled at the life they had created. The ranch thrived under their management, expanding and becoming one of the most respected operations in the region. They hired more permanent hands, built additional barns, invested in better stock. Florence's bookkeeping and business sense combined with Cole's ranching expertise made them a formidable team. But more than the business success, it was the daily moments that filled Florence with contentment. Morning coffee on the porch while William played at their feet, working side by side in the office, Cole trusting her judgment completely. Evenings as a family, reading or playing, William's laughter filling the house. Nights in Cole's arms, still as passionate as their wedding night years before. "Do you ever regret it?" Cole asked one night as they lay in bed, William finally asleep in his room down the hall. "Giving up San Francisco, the life you planned." Florence turned to face him, tracing the lines of his face with her fingers. "Not for a single moment." "That was not really my dream, Cole. It was a plan, a strategy for survival. This," she gestured around them, encompassing the house, the ranch, the life they had built. "This is my dream. I just did not know it until I found you. I love you, Florence Lawson, more every single day." "I love you too. Thank you for teaching me that it is okay to stay, to build roots, to trust someone with my heart." When William was 3 years old, Florence discovered she was pregnant again. This time a daughter, born in the winter, who they named Claire after Florence's mother. With 2 children, the house felt even more alive, full of noise and energy and love. Florence sometimes thought about the woman she had been when she first arrived in Ukiah. So determined to remain detached, to work and leave, to never let anyone close enough to hurt her. That woman felt like a stranger now. Florence had learned that walls built to keep out pain also kept out joy, that protecting yourself from loss meant missing out on love, that the risk of heartbreak was worth the reward of connection. The years passed in a blur of seasons and milestones. William starting school in town, so bright and curious. Claire taking her first steps, her first words. The ranch continuing to prosper, their hard work paying off in security and comfort. Cole's father passing peacefully in his sleep at 80, having lived to see his grandchildren and knowing his son was happy. Florence's 40th birthday, celebrated with friends and family, surrounded by love. "I never imagined I could be this happy," Florence told Cole that night as they sat on the porch, their favorite spot for over 20 years now. William was 14, studying for school inside. Claire was 11, already showing signs of having her mother's head for numbers. That life could be this full. "You took a chance," Cole said, his arm around her shoulders, his hair now threaded with gray. "You were brave enough to change your plans, to let me in, to build this life instead of running to San Francisco. You were brave enough to love someone who was planning to leave," Florence countered. "You could have protected yourself, kept your distance, but you did not. Best decision I ever made." Cole kissed her temple, a gesture of affection as familiar as breathing after all these years. "Well, second best. The best was hiring a bookkeeper from Sacramento who answered our advertisement." Florence laughed, settling more comfortably against his side. The sun was setting over the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. The land stretched out before them, every acre familiar, every fence line and pasture holding memories. This was home, truly and completely. Not because of the place, though she loved the ranch, but because of the man beside her and the family they had created together. She thought sometimes of what her life might have been if she had stuck to her original plan, if she had saved her money and moved to San Francisco after 6 months. She would probably have found a good job, maybe made some friends, built a comfortable if solitary life. She might have even been content in her way, but she would have missed this, all of this. the deep abiding love of a good man, the joy of children and watching them grow, the satisfaction of building something lasting with a true partner, the peace of knowing you were exactly where you belonged. "What are you thinking about?" Cole asked, his voice soft in the gathering dusk. "How different my life is from what I planned," Florence said. "How much better it is. No regrets, not a single one." Florence turned her head to kiss him, slow and sweet. "Thank you, Cole, for everything." "Thank you, Florence, for taking a chance on a cowboy and his ranch, for building this life with me, for being exactly who you are." They sat together as the stars began to appear, the same stars Florence had watched that first night in Ukiah when she had been so certain she would work and leave. She had been so young then, so sure she knew what she wanted, so determined to protect herself from feeling too much. Now, with 20 years of marriage and love behind her, Florence understood what she had been missing. Not the safety of solitude, but the strength that came from true partnership. Not freedom from attachment, but the liberation of being fully known and fully loved. Not the sterile independence of a life alone, but the rich, messy, beautiful complexity of a life shared. She had thought she would work and leave. The cowboy had made her want to build a life. And what a life it had been. What a life it continued to be, each day a gift, each moment precious. This was better than any plan she could have made, any dream she could have imagined. This was home. This was love. This was everything. Years continued to unfold in a rhythm of seasons and cycles. William grew into a strong, thoughtful young man who showed every sign of being as devoted to the ranch as his father. At 18, he was already taking on significant responsibilities, working alongside Cole and earning the respect of the ranch hands. He had his father's steady temperament and his mother's sharp mind, a combination that served him well. Claire, at 15, had inherited Florence's talent for numbers, but also showed an interest in the breeding program Cole had developed over the years. She could calculate projected profits in her head, while also evaluating a horse's conformation with an expert eye. She was fierce and independent, and Florence saw glimpses of her younger self in her daughter, though Claire had the advantage of growing up secure and loved, without the walls Florence had built around her own heart. "She reminds me of you when you first arrived," Cole said one evening, watching Claire argue passionately with William about which breeding stock to invest in. "That same fire, that same certainty. Except she has never had to learn to protect herself the way I did," Florence said softly. "She has always known she was safe and loved. That makes all the difference." Cole squeezed her hand. "We did that. We gave our children what we wanted them to have. Security, love, a home they never have to doubt." Florence felt pride swell in her chest. They had done that. Together, they had created not just a successful ranch but a real family, a place of warmth and safety. The house that had felt so empty when she first arrived was now filled with life and love and laughter. As their children grew toward adulthood, Florence and Cole found themselves entering a new phase of their relationship. With less of the immediate demands of young children, they had more time for each other again. They took rides together in the evenings, revisiting favorite spots on the ranch. They traveled occasionally, visiting San Francisco once, where Florence walked the streets of the city she had once dreamed of living in and felt nothing but gratitude that her life had taken a different path. "Can you imagine living here?" Cole asked as they stood on a crowded street corner, surrounded by noise and rushing people. "No," Florence said simply, taking his hand. "I cannot imagine living anywhere but home." When William turned 21, he approached his parents with a young woman named Sarah, a rancher's daughter from a neighboring property. "I want to marry her," he said, his voice steady but his eyes nervous. "I know I am young, but I love her, and I want to build a life with her here on the ranch, if you will have us." Cole and Florence exchanged glances, a whole conversation happening in that single look, the kind of wordless communication that came from decades of partnership. "Of course," Cole said, standing to shake his son's hand. "We will build you a house, close enough to help with the ranch but far enough for privacy. Welcome to the family, Sarah." Florence hugged her future daughter-in-law, remembering what it felt like to be young and in love and hoping for acceptance. "We are so happy for you both." The wedding was held at the ranch the following spring, a bigger affair than Florence and Cole's had been, with both families and friends from across the county attending. Florence watched William marry Sarah under the oak trees near the house, Cole's arm around her waist, and felt the sweet ache of time passing. Her baby boy was a man now, starting his own family, beginning his own story. "It goes so fast," she whispered to Cole. "It does," he agreed. "But look what we have built. Look at what continues." A year later, they became grandparents when Sarah gave birth to a son. Florence held her grandson and marveled at the continuation of life, at how love multiplied rather than divided. She thought of her own mother, gone so many years now, and wished she could have known this joy, could have seen what Florence's life became. Claire, meanwhile, surprised them by announcing at 17 that she wanted to study veterinary medicine. "I want to come back to the ranch," she assured them quickly, seeing the concern on their faces. "But I want to bring real expertise to our breeding program. There is a program in Sacramento that will train women now. It is only 3 years, and then I will come home." Florence understood her daughter's need to spread her wings while keeping her roots intact. It was different from Florence's own history, but similar in the hunger for knowledge and independence. "Of course you should go," she said firmly, though her heart ached at the thought of Claire leaving. "We will support you completely." Cole was less sanguine about his daughter leaving but understood the value of education and expertise. 3 years, he said gruffly, "and then you come home." 3 years, Claire agreed, hugging him. "I promise." Watching Claire leave for Sacramento, Florence felt the echo of her own journey decades earlier, arriving in a new place with determination and plans. But Claire left knowing she was loved, knowing she had a home to return to, knowing her family supported her dreams. The difference was everything. With both children pursuing their own paths, Florence and Cole found themselves alone in the house for the first time in over 20 years. The quiet felt strange at first, almost uncomfortable, but they adjusted, rediscovering each other without the constant demands of parenthood. "I fell in love with you all over again," Cole told her one night as they danced slowly in the living room to no music but their own heartbeats. "Watching you be a mother, watching you build this family, watching you become even more beautiful with every year that passes." "I never stopped falling in love with you," Florence said, her arms around his neck, her head on his chest. "Every day I discover something new to love. Every day I am grateful I answered that advertisement. Best bookkeeper I ever hired. Only bookkeeper you ever hired. Best wife I ever married. Only wife you ever married, I should hope." Cole laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest into hers. "Only wife I ever wanted to marry. From the moment I saw you step down from that stagecoach, looking so prim and determined, I knew you were going to change my life." "I thought you were trouble," Florence admitted. "Too handsome, too charming. I thought you would be a distraction from my plans." "I was absolutely a distraction from your plans. Thank goodness." They swayed together in the quiet house, the ranch dark and peaceful around them. Florence thought about all the moments that had led to this one. Every choice, every risk, every moment of fear overcome. She had learned so much in her years with Cole. That love did not make you weak, but gave you strength. That trusting someone did not mean losing yourself but finding your truest self. That building roots and a home did not trap you but set you free. True to her word, Claire returned after 3 years, now a qualified veterinarian with modern knowledge to bring to the ranch's breeding program. She brought with her new ideas about animal health and breeding that proved invaluable, increasing the quality and reputation of their stock. Within a few years, buyers were coming from as far as Nevada and Oregon to purchase horses from the Lawson Ranch, known for their health and temperament. William and Sarah had 3 children in quick succession, 2 sons and a daughter, filling the small house Cole had built for them with noise and joy. The ranch that had once felt too quiet now rang with children's laughter again, grandchildren running between the houses, learning to ride almost as soon as they could walk. Florence loved being a grandmother, surprised by how different it was from being a mother. All the joy of children without the constant worry, able to spoil them a bit, and then return them to their parents. She taught them their letters and numbers, told them stories, baked cookies with them on rainy afternoons. Cole was equally smitten, carrying the children on his shoulders around the ranch, teaching them about the land and animals just as he had taught William and Claire. "I did not know I could be this happy," Florence said one evening, watching Cole teach their youngest grandson to rope a practice post. "I did not know life could be this full." "You know what I think," Cole said, coming to stand beside her, his arm automatically going around her waist. "I think you always knew deep down. You were just afraid to believe it was possible." Florence leaned into him, comfortable and content. "Maybe, or maybe I just needed you to show me." "We showed each other," Cole corrected. "You taught me that I could be more than just a rancher. That I could be a husband, a father, a partner in every sense. You made my life bigger, Florence." On their 30th wedding anniversary, Cole surprised Florence with a party, inviting friends and family from across the county. The ranch was decorated with lanterns and flowers, tables of food set up in the yard just like their wedding day 3 decades before. People gave speeches, sharing memories and jokes, celebrating not just the marriage but the life Cole and Florence had built together. William stood to speak, his voice strong and sure. "My parents taught me what love looks like, not just the romantic kind, though they certainly have that." He paused as people laughed. "But the everyday kind. The kind that shows up in the morning and does the work. The kind that supports and challenges and grows. The kind that lasts not because it is easy but because it is worth it. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for showing us all what a real partnership looks like." Claire spoke next, her voice thick with emotion. "My mother arrived in Ukiah with a plan to stay 6 months and leave for San Francisco. She thought she knew what she wanted, but my father showed her that sometimes the best plans are the ones we are brave enough to change." They took a risk on each other, on love, on building something real. And look what they created. Not just a successful ranch, but a family, a legacy, a love that has weathered 3 decades and only grown stronger. That is what I want in my own life someday. What they have. What they are. Florence wept openly, not caring who saw, overwhelmed by love and gratitude. When Cole pulled her into his arms for a dance, she clung to him, this man who had changed everything, who had shown her that she could be loved, that she could build a life, that she could trust and be trusted in return. "Thank you," she whispered against his chest as they swayed. "For 30 years, for everything. Thank you for saying yes," Cole murmured into her hair, "for taking a chance, for staying, for building this life with me." They danced under the stars, surrounded by family and friends, the ranch spreading out around them in the darkness. Florence thought about the frightened, closed-off woman she had been when she first arrived, so determined to protect herself that she was barely living at all. That woman had been transformed by love, opened up like a flower in sunlight, and had bloomed into someone capable of joy and connection and deep, abiding happiness. As the years continued to pass, Cole and Florence grew older together with grace. Cole's hair turned fully gray, then white, and his face weathered further from years in the sun. Florence's hair silvered as well, and lines deepened around her eyes and mouth, the map of a life lived fully. They moved a little slower, tired a little easier, but the essential core of them remained unchanged. They still sat on the porch every evening, still worked together on the ranch books and decisions, still reached for each other in the night. William took over more and more of the daily ranch operations as Cole's energy waned, though Cole remained involved and consulted. Claire's veterinary practice served not just their ranch but the entire region, her skill and knowledge highly respected. The grandchildren grew, the oldest beginning to show interest in ranch management, ensuring another generation would carry on the legacy. On their 40th anniversary, they celebrated quietly, just the immediate family. Florence was 62 now, Cole 66, and they were content to mark the occasion simply. But William and Sarah and Claire surprised them with a gift, a portrait painted from an old photograph taken on their wedding day. Young Cole and young Florence looked out from the canvas, their faces full of hope and love and promise. "Look how young we were," Florence said softly, studying their younger selves. "We had no idea what was ahead of us." "Would you have done anything differently?" Cole asked. "If you had known." Florence thought about this seriously. She thought about the challenges they had faced, the lean years when cattle prices dropped, the winter when disease swept through the herd, the everyday struggles of raising children, running a business, maintaining a marriage through decades of change. The losses, her father-in-law, friends from town, hands they had worked with for years. "No," she said finally, firmly. "Not one single thing. Every challenge made us stronger. Every loss taught us to appreciate what we have. Every year together has been a gift. I would not change any of it." Cole pulled her close, kissing her forehead with the tenderness of long familiarity. "Neither would I. Best 40 years of my life." As Florence entered her late 60s, her health began to decline, a heart condition that the doctor said was manageable but required her to slow down. Cole fussed over her like a mother hen, insisting she rest more, taking over tasks she had always done. Florence found it both touching and mildly annoying, this fierce protectiveness from the man who had spent 40 years treating her as an equal partner. "I am not made of glass," she protested when he insisted she not climb the stairs carrying anything heavy. "No, but you are made of flesh and blood, and your heart needs to be cared for," Cole said firmly. "Let me take care of you, Florence. You have spent decades taking care of everyone else. Let us take care of you now." So Florence learned to accept help, to let her children and grandchildren and especially Cole tend to her. It was harder than she expected, this surrender of independence, but she found there was also grace in it. In letting the people who loved her show that love through service. In acknowledging that being strong did not mean never being vulnerable. On a cool evening in the fall, sitting on their beloved porch wrapped in blankets against the chill, Florence and Cole watched the sunset over the hills they had worked and loved for over 4 decades. "I want you to know," Florence said quietly, her hand in Cole's, "that loving you was the best decision I ever made. That every day with you has been worth it. That I am not afraid of what comes next because I know I lived fully. I let myself love and be loved. I built something real and lasting. I am at peace." Cole's grip tightened on her hand, his voice rough with emotion. "You are not leaving me yet, Florence Lawson. We still have years ahead of us." "I know, I hope so, but I wanted to say it while I can. Thank you, Cole, for everything, for teaching me to trust, for showing me what love really means, for building this beautiful life with me. You did not let me down, Cole said fiercely. In over 40 years, you never let me down, not once. You were my partner in everything, my best friend, the love of my life. And you are right, we built something beautiful. Together, always together. They sat in comfortable silence as the stars began to appear, the same stars that had witnessed their first conversations, their first kiss, their wedding, the birth of their children, 40 years of accumulated moments and memories. Florence felt no regret, no fear, only gratitude. Gratitude for the chance encounter that had brought her to Ukiah. Gratitude for the courage to change her plans. Gratitude for the love that had transformed her from a frightened, solitary woman into someone capable of building a legacy. She had thought she would work and leave. The cowboy had made her want to build a life. And what a life it had been. What a life it continued to be, rich and full and surrounded by love. Florence lived another 5 years, managing her condition carefully, still sharp as ever though her body grew frailer. She celebrated her 70th birthday surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, the ranch echoing with the noise of family. Cole never left her side, attentive and devoted, their love only deepening with time. When Florence finally passed peacefully in her sleep at 72, Cole was holding her hand, had been holding it all night as her breathing gradually slowed and then stopped. He held her for a long time after, this woman who had been his everything, his partner, his love, his life. At her funeral, the church in Ukiah was packed to overflowing with people whose lives she had touched. Ranch hands she had paid fairly and treated with respect. Townspeople she had befriended over the decades. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who had known her love. Cole stood at the front, his children supporting him on either side, and spoke about his wife. Florence came to Ukiah planning to stay 6 months, he said, his voice steady despite his grief. She thought she knew what she wanted. She was wrong, and she was brave enough to admit it. She stayed not because she was trapped, but because she chose to. Every day she chose this life, chose me, chose us. She taught me that love is not about grand gestures, but about small daily acts of partnership. She showed me that the strongest person is not the one who needs no one, but the one who is brave enough to let themselves need and be needed. She made me a better man. She made all of us better by being in our lives. Cole paused, his voice finally breaking. I loved her for 47 years, and it was not long enough. It would never have been long enough, but I am grateful for every moment we had. She made my life worth living. William and Claire spoke as well, sharing memories of their mother, her patience teaching them to read, her fierce protectiveness when anyone threatened her family, her sharp business mind that had made the ranch prosperous, her gentle heart that had created a home full of love, her courage in letting people in despite her fears, her wisdom in knowing that real strength came from connection, not isolation. Florence was buried on a hill overlooking the ranch, her favorite view, the place Cole had first told her he loved her. Cole visited her grave every day, sitting beside her, talking to her about the ranch and the family and how much he missed her. He lived another 8 years, remaining active on the ranch until the very end, surrounded by the family they had created together. When Cole finally joined Florence in death at 83, he was buried beside her on that hill. Their grandson William, who had taken over the ranch completely by then, placed markers for both of them. Simple stones with their names and dates and a single phrase, partners in all things. The ranch continued to thrive through the generations that followed, each adding their own touch while maintaining the foundation Florence and Cole had built. Their great-grandchildren grew up hearing stories about the woman who arrived planning to stay 6 months and the cowboy who convinced her to stay a lifetime. About how they built something real and lasting through hard work and love and the courage to change plans when something better came along. And on warm evenings, when the family gathered on the porch of the big house, now over a century old, they would look out at the land stretching before them and remember. Remember the love story that had started it all. Remember the woman who learned to trust and the man who taught her. Remember that the best plans are sometimes the ones we are brave enough to change. Because Florence had thought she would work and leave, but the cowboy had made her want to build a life. And in building that life, in choosing love over fear, in staying instead of running, she had created a legacy that would endure for generations. Not just the ranch, though that was impressive enough, but the lesson at the heart of it all. That taking a chance on love, on connection, on building something with another person, was always worth the risk. That was the real legacy Florence and Cole left behind. Not just land and cattle and buildings, but the knowledge that love mattered, that partnership mattered, that having the courage to let someone in despite your fears was the bravest and best thing anyone could do. And on that hill overlooking the ranch, side by side for eternity, Florence and Cole rested together, having lived fully, loved deeply, and built a life that was better than any plan either of them could have imagined alone.